When it comes to fans in the National Football League, it's David versus Goliath. But Goliath took a pretty big blow this week. The fight is not over, however. That and more on today's episode of Locked On NFL.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, everybody, to your Friday episode of Locked On NFL, your daily podcast covering the National Football League, all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for making Locked On NFL your first listen or your first view today and every day. Everydayers, thanks for coming through every single day. Don't forget that you can all subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this podcast. We are your Friday hosts. I'm David Harrison. He's Tony Wiggins. We're both on Twitter. We're also both credentialed members of the media. Tony is covering the Jacksonville Jaguars. I cover the Washington Commanders. You can check us out as well on Locked On Jags or Locked On Commanders. Locked On NFL is here with you every Monday through Friday, along with our everydayers. Like I said, appreciate all of you for coming through today. This episode brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app today. Create your account. Use the promo code Locked On NFL to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. On today's episode, we're going to identify our favorite defensive rookie of the year candidates. Are all getting ready for their first NFL training camp. We're going to tell you who the top ones are in our minds. We're also going to tell you who the top offensive rookie of the year candidates are that are not quarterbacks. Marvin Harrison Jr., the first offensive player taken that wasn't a quarterback. Is he, in fact, the top offensive rookie of the year candidate, according to either Wig or myself? But Wig, we got to start this whole thing off with the National Football League being found guilty. And I suppose I should kind of rephrase it. Civil court, there's really not guilty or not guilty. It's like accountable, liable. They use different words sometimes. Every court is a little bit different. So maybe this one says guilty. But either way, it's fun to talk about the National Football League. As much as we love football, as much as we love pro football, the sport, the pageantry, the NFL is a giant. It's a behemoth. It's bigger than its fan base. It's bigger than its clientele. They know that they're bigger. They know that they have the power. They have the leverage. So you know what? That's why the David and Goliath kind of comparison works a little bit there. The fans are the David of this, even though they far outnumber the NFL owners. But the owners tend to have the leverage. This court, this jury, saying not so fast on this. The NFL found liable or guilty in order to pay more than $4.5 billion in damages. $96 million would go to commercial clients, commercial subscribers to Sunday Ticket from the portion of 2011 to 2022 when it belonged to DirecTV. The rest of that money, so $4.6 billion minus $96 million or so, would go to residential class customers, which means if you subscribe to NFL Sunday Ticket with DirecTV from 2011 to 2022 seasons, you might be entitled to a little bit of that money. However, Wig, the NFL is going to appeal this decision, as you would expect them to, right? But they put out a statement in the story that was posted by ESPN. The NFL said, quote, "We are disappointed with the jury's verdict today in the NFL Sunday Ticket class action lawsuit. We continue to believe that our media distribution strategy, which features all NFL games broadcast on free over-the-air television in the markets of the participating teams, and national distribution of our most popular games, supplemented by many additional choices, including Red Zone, Sunday Ticket, and NFL Plus, is by far the most fan-friendly distribution model in all of sports and entertainment." So this fight's not over yet. There has been a stone cast. It is hit. It is landed. However, it is far from over, and it's still going to be a little while before any customers will find out they're actually going to get any money. But Wig, let me ask you this. Should the NFL have to pay fans for basically what's an antitrust lawsuit, basically saying that the NFL is unfairly treating fans and limiting how they could get access to all of these NFL games? Should the NFL have to pay this, or do you believe that the NFL is in the right here and they're doing business the way that business should be done in their market?
If I was in the NFL, I would think that I was doing it correctly. But in this case, I actually agree with the fans. I really don't like, there's sometimes different carriers. Not everybody has the same cable. Not everybody has that same stuff. And I hate when games are on networks that aren't carried by the carrier. And it hasn't happened to me personally, but it's happened to a lot of fans. I've seen games on entities that these people just don't have access to. Therefore, it's cool that the fans got something to go in their favor. And the NFL hates it because lately a lot of jurisprudence has been going the opposite way. And, especially for an office where the commissioner is like the czar of everything, right? Especially the discipline that they dole out to certain people and organizations for doing certain things. Sometimes it's good to see the principal get swatted and get in trouble, and not just for the sake of like punching the millionaire and poking the millionaire in the eye, but the fans, as the fans go. Somebody told me this one time. They said, you know what? Sometimes I just wish a certain person would get up in the middle of the night and hit his toe on his bed rail when he's going to the bathroom. Just have something happen to him, because they always seem like they come out on top. So a cat, I found this out today at the barbershop, and the cat said, well, that's a drop in the bucket. Sure. Who likes to lose $4.7 billion? I don't care if it's a bucket or not. They don't like giving it away, and they don't like losing, which that's why they are who they are and where and how they got to where they are. Oh, don't tell me that they don't like it. Yeah, they don't like anybody telling them, shame on you. You shouldn't have done that. Now we're going to make you pay some money for it. So, yeah, it's going to get appealed. They're going to push it out. I would suspect that they try to settle it and cut that damage down a little bit, and just tell whoever is on the other side of this, hey, man, save yourself some legal fees. Let's just settle this and make it go away. It seems like they always settle things just to make them go away, because it's not good PR. So no one likes to hear that the No Fun League is actually screwing them out of money, and they don't like that message being out there. So therefore, they're going to try to do something about it, I believe, through negotiation, which they probably should have done in the first place. But some folks don't get it until they got to get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that like the foundation of this whole thing, right? So according to some of the articles that I read on this whole story, because this is not something that I've been plugged into directly in any way, shape, or form. Basically, this whole thing started out with one sports bar actually in San Francisco. I can't remember the name of it. Filing a personal, like an individual business lawsuit against the team, basically saying you're gouging, you're price gouging. This is way too much money. Yeah, it's access to all the NFL games that are outside your local market and all that stuff. And today's country, our country today, is more of a transient country than I think it's ever been before. You got 49ers fans who live in New York City. You got Giants fans who live on the West Coast, and everything in between. And I think that's really, where the NFL, like the Sunday ticket idea, is a great one. Pay one flat fee or a monthly fee, and you get access to every single NFL game that's not in your local market, because your local market is your local market. So you're already going to get it no matter what. And I think it's a great way for fans to be able to stay connected to their favorite team no matter where they are in the country. The problem is, again, when, yes, your product is popular, yes, your product is very lucrative, but when you basically start pricing people out of that product, and I think the secondary part of this is the satellite service. You're basically telling people you have to have this satellite service in order to have this product that you want. Therefore, now DirecTV, and they're not being named as plaintiffs in this lawsuit or anything like that, but essentially DirecTV can be like, oh, well, snap, man, like, to have Sunday ticket, you also got to have a base package or a channel package, and those prices are going to start to go up now, because we know you want Sunday ticket, so you're also going to have to pay this, and you got to pay an equipment rental fee, and it all just kind of serves to hit at the NFL fan and make it a little bit harder to stay that dedicated. And honestly, I like that this is happening. Whether the NFL, I do believe that the NFL is going to end up having to pay out some kind of a settlement to customers that had this service, and I'm actually one of those customers. But I don't know how exaggerated it's going to be. I saw one report that these things can inflate up to 3 times. So this could actually turn into like $12 to $16 billion by the end of it. I don't know about all that stuff, but I do like that this is happening right now. And I do hope that it does result in at least a settlement, like you mentioned, or a judgment if it gets that far, because we're seeing another part of this kind of evolution of the NFL and how they broadcast their games with all the streaming services. You already got Thursday Night Football on Amazon Prime. Netflix is getting games. Peacock has got exclusive games, and you're looking at NFL fans and you're telling them, if you want to be the ultimate NFL fan, which if you're the NFL, that's what you want. You want the ultimate NFL fan. You want the fan that wants to watch every game they possibly can. Special night, this night, Thursday night, Monday night, Tuesday afternoon. I want to watch every NFL game. But you're making that fan have to spend. They did the math on it. They said somebody had to spend like $800 a year or something crazy like that to get every single game in the NFL. And it's not the way you treat customers. Now, is the NFL going to go out of business because they're doing it? No, that's part of the problem. They know they can get away with it. But this could be a blow that says, hey, dude, you're getting away with it, but you're getting too close to the edge. Back it off a little bit. I don't know if they're actually going to take that message, but hopefully they get their wig. So eventually this thing's going to get settled out.
They sound like they're proud that this is a premium. They don't want to cheapen it. They want this to be for premium people. But if they had this 25, 30 years ago when I was in the military, I would have loved it. I was in Grand Forks, North Dakota. I had to watch Minnesota Viking games every single week, bro. And I couldn't watch the team that I rooted for, which is the team that you cover. So I know what that feels like to be. And then I ain't even going to talk about Armed Forces Network. When I was overseas, you had one channel. They were showing TV shows that were a year old. And not only, I'm getting up at 1 o'clock in the morning to watch the Super Bowl. It's just all kinds of weird stuff like that. And you had to watch whatever they put on, and you don't know. And the Armed Forces Network back then, they were trying to appease everybody, so it was like a rotation. So I hardly ever saw my team. So it's been good for that. I do think the price got a little bit out of control. I don't do it anymore because I stopped doing it once I got credentialed, because I was always going to just focus on the Jaguar game. And then by the time that game was over, it'd be halftime of the next game when I stopped working. So I couldn't watch it anyway.
I'm that crazy guy in the press box that has Red Zone channel up on my iPad while the game's going on in front of me. Still focused on the Commander stuff, but I do have that stuff on just, during those breaks, catch a little bit. I'm a football addict. I don't know what to say. But yeah, product is great. Price got too inflated. Ultimately, the fans now are trying to slap the hand of the NFL, say, hey, you got too greedy. Push it back. We want to watch our favorite teams every Sunday, and we're willing to pay. Just don't go overboard. Speaking of watching your favorite teams, there are a lot of offensive rookies that fan bases are very excited to see this season, whether it's Sunday Ticket or another service that they're going to use to see those rookies. Quarterbacks dominate Rookie of the Year conversations every single year on the offensive side of the ball, as they should. But there are some non-quarterbacks who should be in the running. Wig and I are going to share our opinions on who our favorites are coming up next on today's episode of Locked On NFL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And this episode of Locked On NFL is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting your baseball tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. They've got killer last-minute deals that can save you about 60% on tickets, all in prices, so there's no surprises at checkout and views from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee, so you can make a little bit of money if you can find tickets cheaper than on the Gametime app. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. On July 3rd, if you're in the D.C. area, the Washington Nationals are hosting the New York Mets, and they will have fireworks after the game in celebration of Independence Day. So if you want to head out to the ballpark in D.C. and catch America's pastime, you can do that for as low as $11. They also play on the 4th of July, but it's an earlier first pitch, so no fireworks. But if you want to spend the 4th of July at the ballpark, you can do that too in D.C. Take the guesswork out of buying baseball tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create your account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. Create your account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thanks again for making Locked On NFL your first listen, your first view today and every day. Everydayers, thanks for coming through like you always do. Come back on Monday as well. Kevin Ostreicher of Locked On Ravens will be back to talk about some of the biggest sports stories going on around the National Football League. In the meantime, make sure you're also checking out Locked On Sports Today, a 24/7 sports streaming channel that is free for you, programmed for you every single day to bring you the biggest stories, can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on the YouTube or your YouTube app or website, or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Moving on, we talked about big bad NFL, hopefully getting a little bit of medicine. We'll see if it has any major impacts on the future. Some of us can be a little bit more skeptical on that. Hopefully, I like to live in an optimism world, but we have to be real as well. Let's talk about Offensive Rookie of the Year. Speaking of guys who are optimistic this time of year, there are a lot of rookies about to make their NFL debuts here in about, 70 or so days after training camp, after preseason games, their real debuts, not their preseason debuts. Quarterbacks dominate Rookie of the Year conversations. Caleb Williams is the number one candidate to be the NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year, I think for good reason. I think Jane Daniels probably the second best person, second quarterback ranked there. I think it's pretty good rankings as well. But we want to talk about some non-quarterback candidates here, Wig. And I'm going to let you start this thing off. Marvin Harrison Jr. was the first non-quarterback selected on the offensive side of thing in the NFL draft this April. Is he your top non-quarterback Rookie of the Year candidate?
He is. And it's pretty simple for me. Doesn't mean I think he's going to be the best rookie, but when I look at Malik Neighbors, I have questions about his quarterback. And when I look at Rome Odunze, they got a whole bunch of other people that they got to throw the ball to. So a guy can be a great player, but this is about the sheer opportunity that he has. He's the number one receiver going into camp. period, point blank, end of discussion. And Kyler Murray is going to find him. And Kyler Murray has been the type of quarterback that people have said, he'll have his full potential when they get some more weapons. He hadn't had a real good receiving core. And then the only other guy he had was Hollywood Brown, and they're about the same height. So that didn't work out. I'm thinking that Marvin Harrison Jr., just by opportunity, coming into that situation where he's the number one guy, that's why I think, it is a no-brainer. I do have a little bit of a wild card, though, and it's actually a guy who's picked in the second round, and that's Xavier Leggett. I just think he's going to be tremendous.
Ooh.
Yeah, I think he's going to be tremendous, but I just don't think they're going to win very much. It's going to be pretty hard for Arizona to win, too, but as you saw last year, they remind me of Detroit, where that coach is going to get everything out of them. And I really believe in Monty Ossenfort as a GM. Also, I like his drafts the last 2 years. So I do believe they have a really, really good plan. And it's just a tailor-made situation for a dude that is probably more ready to play than anybody because of who he was training under all these years in Brian Hartline. And then his dad, who has probably taught him a whole bunch of stuff. And his dad was a savant when it comes to the nuances of the game. So maybe some of the rookie stuff that he has to go through, it won't faze him because Ohio State wide receivers have come into the league, and look at Olave and then look at Garrett Wilson. These guys, they ain't that big of an adjustment because of how they play and how they do things and the level of competition that they've had in the wide receiver room in Columbus. So now you add the fact that this is Marvin freaking Harrison Jr., I think is a no-brainer that he's going to be Rookie of the Year offensively.
Look, I don't hate the take, right? But I have a little bit of an opposite view of the situation for Marvin Harrison Jr. in Arizona. While I think the kid is incredibly talented and he's going to be a very good NFL receiver for a long time if he can stay healthy, and I agree with you, I think he does help unlock more potential out of Kyler Murray. I think he more so unlocks the potential in Kyler Murray to be more dangerous as a runner than as a passer. Because I think when you look at the Arizona Cardinals, you're already going to stack the box because they got a run game that likes to force you to do that. Kyler Murray is a threat, so you're going to want to stay close to the line of scrimmage as much as possible. I think you're going to bracket cover Marvin Harrison Jr. a lot, and you're going to force Kyler Murray to use other weapons like his other receivers, like Trey McBride, the tight end, who, by the way, Trey McBride said he thinks that Kyler Murray could have an MVP caliber season this year, and I think Marvin Harrison is probably a big reason for that. But again, I agree with you that Marvin Harrison's impact is going to be major. I just don't know if it's going to show up in the stat box enough. And then same thing with the Cardinals. You got the Niners, you got the Rams who are trying to be reinvigorated, and you got the Seahawks. I don't know if they're going to win enough for Marvin Harrison Jr. to really challenge to be an offensive rookie of the year. But I do like the player. I just want to make that 100% clear. No hate on the player or what the Cardinals are trying to build. I just don't know that they're there yet. I'm also not going to go with Rome Odunze. I'm also not going to go with Malik Neighbors for a lot of the reasons you said, Wig. And I also have a second player that I want to kind of drop a beat on that I want all Jaguars fans to remember. I'm the one who said this.
Oh, you're going to hurt me. You're going to hit me like that?
Could be a candidate to be an offensive rookie of the year. Now, he's not my main guy, so I'm just going to say this. The reason I think so is because if he can do some of the things the Jaguars offense I think is going to ask him to do, and they can compete with the Houston Texans. Everybody loves the Houston Texans. Mm-hmm. So if the Jags can compete with the Texans in that division, beat the Houston Texans, and Brian Thomas Jr. can be a part of that, I think that kind of love and momentum could get him some votes. So that's not my main guy, but I did want to throw out a second name there. My main guy is Xavier Worthy, the Kansas City Chiefs. And Wig, I know what you're going to say. There's a lot of mouths to feed there. And there are a lot of mouths to feed there. But you know what? You got a really big spoon in Patrick Mahomes. And if you're a defense, who are you going to cover, man? You're going to cover. You're going to cover Kelsey. You're going to cover Worthy. Like, there's a lot of things that this team has been wanting to do with a certain wide receiver that I don't want to dog too much. I'm not going to say his name publicly, but he used to play for the Giants. Used to play for the Florida Gators. Talented kid. A little bit of an attitude problem, maybe a work ethic problem. And I think Xavier Worthy can do a lot of the things that they've been wanting to do with him, but he can do them more effectively. And that's not all he can do. So I think he's a really good candidate, dark horse candidate. It's going to be a little bit hard, though, too, because even if he does really, really well, he's going to have to set some rookie records, because if he does really well but doesn't set any records, people are just going to chalk it up to Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. So I think that's going to hurt him a little bit, but I like Xavier Worthy as a potential non-quarterback offensive rookie of the year.
I like it. And especially when you're talking about BTJ, I love it. I just know they got a lot of people to give the ball to here in Jacksonville as well. Yep. And they really like to run the ball. So I'm with it, and I'm with. I didn't want to seem like I was a homer, by saying BTJ, but I also think that I agree with you about where I think he's going to make a lot of big plays. The only slight adjustment I'll make with the Marvin Harrison situation, you're right, it will open up some things for Kyler Murray in the run game. But something Kyler Murray also does that I think going to benefit Marvin with the coverages, he runs. So you're going to have a lot of scramble routes. He's going to run and get away, and then they're going to break the route. And sometimes he's just going to heave it down there, and the kid's 6'3", 6'4", so he's going to go up and get it. And I think that's my line of thinking about that too. But I do not disagree with you. I think your take is very on point.
Hey, Washington, they used to say, F it, Terry McLaurin's down there somewhere. In Arizona, they might say, F it, Marvin Harrison's down there somewhere. Just throw the ball. And you're right, Kyler Murray runs to throw. Like, he'll run to run, but he runs to throw as well. So defense has got to be incredibly disciplined. Some defensive players that could have that type of discipline to make an impact year one. We're going to share two of them with you, our Defensive Rookie of the Year candidates, coming up next on today's episode of Locked On NFL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are wrapping up today's episode of Locked On NFL, wrapping up the week here at Locked On NFL. Like Wig and I always do, we thank you for coming through. Thank you for coming through next week as well. I'm sure you're going to come back through next week. We got plenty of stuff to talk about here during the quote-unquote dead period. And Wig, we're going to finish this episode this week talking about Defensive Rookie of the Year candidates. You went NFC West for your Offensive Rookie of the Year candidate. I think you're going NFC West for your Defensive Rookie of the Year candidate as well.
I sure am. And I'm going with Braden Fisk. And I know before anybody says anything, they're going to be like, how you going to win Rookie of the Year on defense, man? And he wasn't even their first defensive player that they take, right? And then how you going to say a dude's going to replace Aaron Donald at the same position at 3 technique and actually win Rookie of the Year and make people say, well, it wasn't really Aaron Donald. Well, let me got newsflash for you. It was Aaron Donald, right? Aaron Donald is the GOAT right now. Chris Jones is chomping on his heels a little bit, in my opinion, as an interior defensive line, but he is absolutely the GOAT. Here's what I like about Fisk. That motor, he reminds me of Dan Williams. And I watched him because I watched him at Florida State. Everybody's going to talk about the lack of arm length. The dude is a legit 6'4", 298 pounds with quickness and a motor that doesn't stop. By his very nature, he's just going to be able to make plays because he's going to always go hard, and he's going to make a lot of flash plays because of that quickness. I don't know if people saw the combine with his shuttle and his get off. It is unbelievable. And he ran a nice 40 time as well. Braden Fisk is going to be a superstar in the National Football League. But I love motor guys. I like guys that are in really good physical condition and they play fast all day long. And that's what he does. And I think the Rams are going to turn him loose.
Yeah, man, I was a big fan of Braden Fisk during the pre-draft process as well. I knew that, the team that I covered, the Commanders, were not going to draft a defensive tackle high enough to bring him on board, but I had fun watching and evaluating him anyway. And I like his teammate, Florida State teammate and Los Angeles teammate, Jared Verse, obviously is going to be a candidate up there. Very good edge rusher. I think, honestly, Braden Fisk makes that much noise to be one of those candidates at the end of the season. Jared Verse is probably going to be a reason for that. But you know what? If Jared Verse is making all that noise, Braden Fisk is going to be a reason for that as well. So they might just split that trophy no matter who wins if one of the Rams defenders wins that trophy. My pick, though, Wig, I'm going edge defender, but I'm not going Jared Verse. I'm going Dallas Turner because I think in a lot of ways Dallas Turner was arguably one of the most well-rounded, most complete pass rushers in this year's NFL draft class. A lot of people kind of talked about if he wasn't surrounded by all these other great Alabama defenders, maybe he would have been ranked higher by the media, maybe even some of the internal guys. Almost like you're hurt by having so many star players around you. But I look at the Minnesota Vikings. I know they need aggression. They need to go out there and make people pay for play actions and for long drops and long developing routes. And Dallas Turner's the type of guy to do it. And I look at a coach like Brian Flores, and he's going to bring him. He's going to bring him with help. But also, guess what? When you get sold in on Dallas Turner's coming, we got to overload, we got to chip, we got to do all this, we got to double team, all stuff. And we want to throw screens over his head, we want to throw quick slants. Guess what he's going to do? He's going to drop off. He's going to pick one off on you. And I think Dallas Turner has the ability to be a very explosive defender in year one. I like him just as I like his coach. Should be future, again, head coach Brian Flores. But I like the Minnesota Vikings and what they're potentially going to do with him. I think he's like the perfect prospect. When you talk about scheme fit and prospect, I think that was the perfect fit for the Minnesota Vikings in that pick.
I agree. And I think Brian Flores is the perfect, because people talk about him being a tweener. They say, well, we thought he was 6'4", 260. It turns out he's 6'2" and change and about 240. That's perfect for Brian Flores because he's by nature a linebackers coach, right? So he's going to be able to put him in situations where he's going to bring him off the edge, but he's also going to put him in situations where he's going to be able to play out in space a little bit. So yeah, I would go with that, and I would agree. That's a very, very good point. Good assessment.
Awesome. So we've got 2 defensive rookie of the year candidates, 2 non-quarterback offensive rookie of the year candidates. And of course, started it all off with the NFL being ordered right now to pay over $4.5 billion, which even with 32 plus billionaires in the club, that's still a lot of money and could be more coming, but also could be less coming. Let's see what the NFL has up their sleeves. That's our Friday episode of Locked On NFL. Make sure you come back Monday. Kevin Ostreicher of Locked On Ravens will be back with you for a whole new episode here. So make sure you're subscribed, make sure you're downloading, make sure you're auto subscribed and all those other things. For your second listen, check out Locked On Jags, Locked On Commanders, or stick right here. Head over to Locked On Sports Today, the first ever 24/7 sports streaming channel on YouTube. As always, thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen or your first view today and every day. Everybody's coming through on a regular basis like you do. For Tony Wiggins, I'm David Harrison, and we will see you right back here next Friday for another episode of Locked On NFL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.